Hello, I'm R.A. Spratt, and I want to welcome people joining us this week on the Yoto podcast platform. Now, just so you know, most of the bedtime stories I tell here are standalone stories. But over the last year, we have been dipping in and out of the epic story of Odysseus, the hero from ancient Greek mythology. And this week, I'm going to be telling the second last installment of that tale. So if you can jump in right here, that'll be fine. I'm sure you'll pick it all up. But if you did want to go back to the beginning and start from the first episode, you can search back through the episodes. The first episode's called Odysseus, as told by Nanny Piggins, and it dropped on January 8th, 2025. Or you can go back and listen to any of the other episodes. You're going to find fairy tales, myths, legends, and mysteries. I hope you enjoy them all. Now let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, R.A. Spratt. All right, well, it's a bit of a pooky day here in Bowral, but we've had a big high-energy weekend here. My older daughter turned 18, so we had a big birthday party, had lots of friends, family and everything coming up to Bowral for the weekend. So, yeah, it's crazy to think when I started doing this podcast 6 years ago, she was only 12, it was COVID and my kids were young, and now they're like 18 and nearly 15. So, yeah, they've really grown up while I've been doing this. So anyway, we've had a very hectic weekend and exhausting weekend. So I have not had a chance to write a fresh story. So I thought, and I knew I wasn't going to, because I knew this was going to be a hectic weekend. And I knew I've got a hectic week coming up too, because I'm going up to Sydney on Wednesday and Thursday to record another audiobook. I'm going to be doing Friday Barnes. I think we're up to book 4. They're trying to get me to do the back catalogue of Friday Barnes as much as possible because the audiobook sales are going so well. So they're trying to get all my back catalogue recorded. So that's, it's fun for me. I enjoy doing that. But anyway, because of all this busyness, I'm going to read to you today a chapter out of one of my books. It's going to be one of the Nanny Piggins books. It's the 8th book in the series. So the last full book in the series. Well, gosh, that's just not true. There's 10 books now. But the 8th book, I tied up the series at the end of this book. And then I did the Christmas book. And then like a decade later, I did Nanny Piggins and the Origin Story. But this is the 8th book. And I'm going to read chapter 6. So the book is Nanny Piggins and the Race to Power. And I'm going to read chapter 6, which is Nanny Piggins and the Vacant Lot. Here we go. Derek was sitting quietly in his science class, trying to pretend he knew what kinetic energy was, when Nanny Piggins burst into the room, demonstrating kinetic, potential and sound energy in one dramatic move. She scanned the room and spotted him. "Derek, you must come with me immediately. It's a matter of utmost desperate urgency," exclaimed Nanny Piggins as she strode over and started to help Derek gather up his things. She then threw them out the window because where they were going, he would not be needing school books. "Hang about, what's going on?" asked the teacher. "You can't just pull Derek out of class without written permission." "But there's been a dreadful tragedy," sobbed Nanny Piggins. "Father?" asked Derek. No, said Nanny Piggins, struggling to hold back tears. "Something far worse." The teacher was a man and a scientist, so he was doubly uncomfortable with displays of emotion. The last thing he wanted was for a lady pig and a young boy to burst into tears in his classroom. His own cat had died the previous week, and if he saw other people crying, it would set him off too. And if his class saw him cry, he knew they would never hand their homework assignments in on time again. So he ushered Derek and Nanny Piggins out of the classroom as fast as he could, promising to send a memorial wreath as soon as possible. Nanny Piggins did not stop with Derek. Next she went to Samantha's classroom and dragged her away from the clutches of a well-meaning student teacher. Then Mike was fetched simply by pulling him out of a window when his teacher's back was turned. "What's going on, Nanny Piggins?" asked Derek. "What's happened that's so bad?" "Is there a warrant out for your arrest?" asked Samantha. "Is the ringmaster trying to kidnap you?" asked Michael. "Did you accidentally break into the Slimbridge cake factory and eat all their finger buns again?" asked Derek. "Oh no," said Nanny Piggins. "This is a real tragedy, something that affects us all. It will devastate the community if we don't do something right now." "Tell us about it from the beginning," suggested Derek. "I was at the library this morning," began Nanny Piggins. "But what about the restraining order?" interrupted Michael. That says I mustn't go in the library. It doesn't say I can't stand outside and yell things, said Nanny Piggins. And just this morning I thought up some really good rude names to yell at the head librarian, so I had to go down to try them out. Did they work? Asked Michael. I don't know, admitted Nanny Piggins. The head librarian wouldn't come out of her office. But the junior librarian jotted them all down and promised to send them to the head librarian in a memo. And how did this lead to a tragedy? Asked Samantha. While I was yelling through the front door of the library, I happened to notice their window display, where the council posts all the plans for their new development projects. Like when they're building a new shopping centre and stuff like that, asked Michael. If only they were building something as benevolent as a shopping centre, lamented Nanny Piggins. I'm afraid our local council is doing something 1,000 times more wicked. The children struggled to imagine what Nanny Piggins could think was so wicked. Samantha hesitated to use the next word because she knew it had a strong effect on her nanny. Not a bacon factory, she asked. Nanny Piggins flinched in horror. Good lardy cakes, nothing that bad. What an atrocious thought. But definitely something terrible. What is it? Asked Derek. You know the vacant lot on Hazelnut Street? Asked Nanny Piggins. Yes, said the children. Well, the council is going to turn it into... Nanny Piggins paused for dramatic emphasis. Into a park. A car park? Asked Michael. No, a park, said Nanny Piggins. You mean a public park? Asked Derek. With swings and play equipment? Asked Samantha. Yes, exactly, said Nanny Piggins. The children looked at each other. They were not sure how to assimilate this information. Derek spoke first. But, Nanny Piggins, surely a new park is a good thing. But what about our vacant lot? Said Nanny Piggins. I looked at those plans closely. They are not making any promises to build another one somewhere else. If they go ahead with this park plan, there will be no vacant lots in easy walking distance of our house. The vacant lot on Hazelnut Street is covered in builder's rubbish and weeds, said Michael. And burnt-out cars, said Samantha. And there's an open storm water drain running through the middle, said Derek. At night time, the whole place is crawling with rats. I know, said Nanny Piggins, which is what makes it such a wonderful place to explore with children. There's so much scope for imagination and role play. On a swing, you just swing, but in a burnt-out car, you can pretend to be a runaway pig escaping from the law. Why do you need to pretend? Muttered Michael. That's what you do most days. In the storm water drain, you can pretend to be convicts, chained together and on the run from bloodhounds, said Nanny Piggins. But there's a danger of flash flooding, said Derek. And big weedy bushes and builder's waste are perfect for pretending to be soldiers attacking the enemy's cake factory to cut off their supply, said Nanny Piggins. But if there's a park, there'll be flowers and lawns, said Samantha, and it will look nice. Ha! Nice, scoffed Nanny Piggins. Anywhere can be nice, but being a thrilling playground for the imagination is not so easily achieved. So why did you pull us out of school? Asked Michael. Not that I'm complaining. I wasn't really enjoying learning about the exploration of river tributaries. So we can put a stop to it, of course, said Nanny Piggins. How? Asked Samantha, desperately hoping that her nanny's answer would not be something that involved chaining herself or others to a bulldozer. According to council regulations, a development plan can be stopped immediately, said Nanny Piggins. All you need is 10,000 signatures on a petition. 10,000, exclaimed Derek. I know, it's not many, is it, said Nanny Piggins. Just 5,000 each if we get Boris and split up into 2 groups. If we get started right now, I'm sure we'll have a couple of thousand by dinner time. Sadly, Nanny Piggins' epic optimism was somewhat deflated when they met again around the kitchen table just 7 short hours later. How many signatures did you get? Asked Michael, as his nanny slumped down in her chair and started comfort-eating the raw cake ingredients she found in the cupboard. None, said Nanny Piggins sullenly. Not even the people she threatened to bite, said Samantha. Not even the people I did bite, added Nanny Piggins. Well, we did better than that, said Boris proudly. You did? Asked Nanny Piggins, immediately perking up. Yes, said Boris. We got 1 signature. Really? Said Samantha. 7 hours of door-knocking had made her realise that the general population was in fact very pro-parks and anti-rat-infested vacant lots. Who was the 1 signature? Mrs. McGill next door, said Derek. She hit Boris over the head with a handbag first, said Michael. "She didn't hurt me physically," said Boris, with a sniff, "but she did hurt my feelings." "But then she found out we wanted her to sign a petition about the park. She cheered up," said Derek. "She signed it right away." "She says the sound of children enjoying themselves gives her a migraine," explained Michael. "But she wouldn't be able to hear children in a park 6 blocks away," said Samantha. "Yes, but she says she would know they were there enjoying themselves, and to her mind that was just as bad," explained Michael. "I don't like to abandon anything," said Nanny Piggins, "particularly babies. I know it worked for Moses' mother when she put him in a basket and set him afloat on the Nile, but as a general rule, leaving infants with no discernible nautical skills in charge of a vessel is a bad idea. That instance aside, in this case, I think we are going to have to abandon the petition." "Does that mean we have to go to school tomorrow?" asked Michael. "Of course not," said Nanny Piggins. "Tomorrow you must help me prepare." "You're not going to go and buy a long chain, are you?" asked Samantha, envisaging the bulldozer scenario becoming ever more likely. "No," said Nanny Piggins. "I need to prepare some really good arguments. There's going to be a public meeting next week where members of the general public can tell the council what we think of their wicked plans to vandalise our beloved play area." "You've started coming up with arguments already, haven't you?" guessed Michael. "Yes," said Nanny Piggins. "Fortunately, I have a long list of colourful insults because I can reuse the ones I prepared for the head librarian. It would be a shame to let such evocative imagery go to waste." It was a full 3 days until the meeting, so Nanny Piggins had a lot of time to read the speeches of Winston Churchill regarding his determination to win World War II, and listen to the speeches of various professional wrestlers regarding who they were going to tear apart with their bare hands. So when she arrived at the meeting, she was fully prepared to eviscerate her local council members with her cutting wit, or leap at them in an atomic piledriver, whichever felt more appropriate in the moment. What Nanny Piggins did not realise was that the councillors knew a thing or two about not listening to their local constituents. These public meetings were held every month, and the councillor in charge of the subcommittee on public consultation, the least important councillor in the council, would always give a long and boring talk about fiduciary responsibility or water rates or something equally boring, so that anyone planning to complain would be put to sleep or be totally exhausted with the dreariness of it all, and therefore keep their own comments short. Finally, after a 2.5-hour report on the installation of a drip system in the sewage treatment plant's garden, the councillor threw the meeting open to the floor and asked for any other business. Surprisingly, Nanny Piggins did not immediately leap to her trotters. It took the children a couple of seconds to wake her up by waving a coffee cake in front of her snout. So the first person to the microphone was Nanny Piggins' arch nemesis, Nanny Ann. "I'd like to complain about the plan to build a park on the Hazelnut Street vacant lot," said Nanny Ann. Nanny Piggins rubbed her ears. "Am I dreaming?" she asked. "Or has the polarity of the entire planet reversed? Because I can't think of any other earthly reason why Nanny Ann would be championing my argument." "Shh, just listen," said Derek. "What is the basis for your objection?" asked the councillor. "I don't want there to be a park because parks are too dirty," said Nanny Ann. "Phew," said Nanny Piggins. For a moment there, I thought she was going to say something reasonable. "But there are going to be beautiful flower beds and lawns," said the councillor. "The lawns are the worst bit," protested Nanny Ann. "If there are lawns, children will sit on them. Or, even worse, run across them and fall over. Have you ever tried to get a grass stain out of a pair of white espadrilles?" "I can't say that I have," conceded the councillor. "And flowers will only lead to bees, and where there are bees, there is honey," continued Nanny Ann. Honey," said Boris. "And honey is packed full of sugar, which causes childhood obesity," said Nanny Ann. "And I don't see how you can stand by and encourage childhood obesity." "But the children will run around the park and burn off energy," said the councillor. "Not if they're raised properly, they won't," said Nanny Ann. "Running is undignified. Thieves run, and people who are late." Nanny Piggins leapt to her trotters. "Nanny Ann is a raving lunatic," she declared. "Hear, hear," agreed the councillor. "But in this instance, I agree with her," said Nanny Piggins. "These plans to build a park are morally bankrupt, but for the opposite reasons Nanny Ann has given. A park is wrong because there is no way a park can be as fun as a vacant lot." Within the last 3 months, 4 children have been taken to hospital with head injuries, 1 with a tetanus infection and 2 with rat bites, all from the Hazelnut Street vacant lot, said the counsellor, reading from his notes. Which just goes to show how much they must love playing there, said Nanny Piggins. I remember my first tetanus infection. In hindsight, it really was silly to tap dance on a bed of nails, but at the time, it was a lot of fun. The park is going ahead, said the counsellor. We've been given a grant by the Ethel Baumgarten Society for the beatification of suburban areas. We can't spend the money on anything else, so it will be spent on this. Please, for the sake of the children, can't you embezzle the funds and run off to Brazil, pleaded Nanny Piggins? Or has your job in local government entirely robbed you of any initiative? It's going ahead, declared the counsellor firmly, and we've been given a generous grant. Apparently, the children in this area have the 7th highest rate of asthma and the 5th highest rate of vitamin D deficiency in the country, and therefore particularly inspire the pity of wealthy benefactors. So we're doing this properly. We've hired a leading expert in the international study of children's play to be a consultant on the project. You've hired an adult who's spent his whole life watching children? Asked Nanny Piggins. Why couldn't you just flush the cash down the toilet like a normal lunatic? Dr. Higginbottom is a leader in his field, said the counsellor. Ha! So he's a world leader in waffle, scoffed Nanny Piggins. If I had a PhD in shim-sham, I wouldn't be boasting about it. When does he get here? He flies in from Geneva tomorrow, said the counsellor. What was he doing in Switzerland? Asked Nanny Piggins, advising them to move the Alps 3 inches to the left to improve the feng shui. Actually, he was advising them on, began the counsellor. It was a rhetorical question, said Nanny Piggins. You're not meant to answer rhetorical questions. You're meant to accept that you've been insulted. Now, when is this snake oil salesman going to inspect the site? I can't give you the details of our private meeting, said the counsellor. What about the Freedom of Information Act? Demanded Nanny Piggins. People have a right not to be harangued by pigs, countered the counsellor. Not when they're going to ruin my favourite vacant lot, they don't, declared Nanny Piggins. I'm not telling you when the meeting is, yelled the counsellor. I'll find out, said Nanny Piggins. I don't like being unpleasant, but I'm very good at it, and if that's what it takes, that's what I'll do. Nanny Piggins started to strip off her dress to reveal her wrestling leotard underneath, which had the words Nanny the Crusher Piggins emblazoned in diamantes across her chest. You really would be better off if you just told her, said Derek kindly. You're being a nuisance, accused the counsellor. I've got a good mind to call the police and have you removed from this meeting. Go ahead, challenged Nanny Piggins, but I'm 1 step ahead of you. I never go to a public meeting, auction or library without a 2-kilogram box of shortbread biscuits in my handbag, especially for bribing the police. Nanny Piggins, remember you promised the police sergeant you'd stop telling people you bribe him? Reminded Samantha. I meant coax the police to see my point of view, amended Nanny Piggins. This meeting is adjourned, called the counsellor, banging his gavel on the fold-up table. You can't do that, said Nanny Piggins. Yes, I can, said the counsellor. It's in the rules for public meetings. As soon as a member of the public physically threatens me, I can call the meeting to a close. So, thanks to you, I can get home in time to eat my reheated dinner while watching The Young and the Irritable with my wife. I will admit, said Nanny Piggins, as they walked home later that evening, that I feel slightly guilty about berating the counsellor. If he likes The Young and the Irritable, he's clearly a man of discerning taste. So you're going to abandon your opposition and let the council go ahead and build their beautiful park? Asked Derek. Goodness, no, exclaimed Nanny Piggins. It would be wrong to allow them to proceed with such senseless vandalism. I'm just going to have to persuade this international expert to see my point of view. How are you going to do that? Asked Michael. A good hard bite on the shins ought to do it, guessed Nanny Piggins. But you don't know when he's going to inspect the park, said Samantha. We'll just have to camp there until he turns up, said Nanny Piggins. But our tent blew away when he tried to convert it into a hot air balloon by strapping the kettle barbecue underneath and filling it with hot air, Derek reminded her. Oh, yes, a double tragedy, said Nanny Piggins sadly. We lost the tent and we haven't toasted marshmallows since. But never mind. At the vacant lot, we can sleep in one of the burnt-out cars. But what about the rats? Protested Samantha. I'll bake them a cake, said Nanny Piggins. They won't want to bite us after they've tried my raspberry ripple delight cake. Will we get some too? Asked Michael. He liked anything with the words ripple or cake in it. Of course, said Nanny Piggins. I can't have you biting the rats out of jealousy. So Nanny Piggins, Boris and the children spent the night camping in a burnt-out car on the vacant lot. To be strictly accurate, they spent about 45 minutes camping on the vacant lot. By the time they'd baked all the supplies Nanny Piggins felt were necessary for a night of camping, then baked another batch of supplies because they'd so thoroughly tasted the first batch, then packed it all up in Nanny Piggins' travelling trunk, along with several gripping novels and complete changes of clothes for any eventuality. Nanny Piggins felt it was vitally important that a person should be prepared for a white-tie ball at a moment's notice. They eventually stepped out their front door at 5:45 a.m. It then took them an hour and a half to walk the 6 blocks to the park, partly because the travelling trunk was so heavy to drag, but mainly because they got so engrossed in a very enthusiastic game of hide-and-seek along the way. Nanny Piggins managed to squeeze through Mr. Mahmood's cat flap and hide in his kitchen. And because none of the children thought to look in a locked house, and Nanny Piggins was so thoroughly engrossed eating the entire contents of Mr. Mahmood's fridge, it took some time for them to find her. It was only when Mr. Mahmood came downstairs to breakfast and discovered that Nanny Piggins had drunk all the milk that they heard his telltale yelling and guessed where she was. Fortunately, he was soon placated by a half share of a raspberry ripple delight cake, and they arrived safely at the vacant lot at 7:45. They'd only just rolled out their sleeping bags and set up their campfire when 3 white cars drew up alongside the vacant lot. Who could that be? Wondered Derek. Perhaps they've come to burn out their cars, guessed Nanny Piggins. That would be good. There are already 3 burnt-out cars here. If there were another 2, we could have one each to sleep in. Oh, it's the counsellor, exclaimed Samantha, as grey-suited men began to emerge from the vehicles. What are you doing here? Demanded Nanny Piggins rudely. What are you doing here? Demanded the counsellor. This is public land. I have every right to be here, stated Nanny Piggins boldly. No, actually it's not, said the counsellor. It won't become public land until it becomes a park, so technically you're trespassing. I'm not trespassing, said Nanny Piggins. I'm tresstaying, because I'm not passing anywhere until this issue is resolved. The counsellor sighed. Please just go home. Dr. Higginbottom is going to be here any minute, and I don't want you to embarrass me in front of him. Don't worry, said Boris. Nanny Piggins never sets out to embarrass anyone else. She'd only ever embarrass herself. And I don't embarrass easily, said Nanny Piggins. After spending years of being blasted out of a cannon and having people look up my dress, it takes a lot to mortify me. Just then another car pulled up. Out of interest, said Nanny Piggins, were you planning to burn out these cars? Because if you did, I think it would make a fine addition to this vacant lot. The counsellor rolled his eyes. We're building a park, not adding to the waste on a vacant lot. All right, said Nanny Piggins, but I know which would be quicker. 5 gallons of petrol on a lit match and my improvements would be done with. They watched as the car door opened and a tall, heavy-set man wearing a strange-coloured suit got out. Is that suit red? Asked Derek. It looks almost pink, said the counsellor. I think you'll find the technical term for that colour is blush, said Nanny Piggins, or, as the laymen say, dark pink. What sort of man wears a pink suit? Wondered the counsellor, beginning to suspect that perhaps he'd made a horrible decision. What sort of man has the word bottom in his name and doesn't get it changed by deed poll? Asked Nanny Piggins. Would you like me to ask him? Asked Boris. He's coming this way. Dr. Higginbottom, said the counsellor, holding out his hand. I'm counsellor. Said Dr. Higginbottom. Stop right there. I am a creative. I can't have my head filled with meaningless details. I was just going to tell you my name, said the counsellor. Dr. Higginbottom held up his hand for silence again. Enough! I'm here to create a vision. A space that will improve the lives of the children in this town for decades to come. I can't have my head filled with empty words. I told you so, said Nanny Piggins smugly. I've never met anyone with a PhD. Whose head wasn't largely empty. I knew I should have worn my earplugs, sighed Dr. Higginbottom, turning to the scurrying assistant behind him. Sebastian, is there some way you could get these people to stop talking? Shh! Said Sebastian sharply, with his finger across his lips, in case the rudeness of his shushing was not immediately apparent. Samantha, whispered Nanny Piggins, remind me to bite both of them before they get back in their car. I'm ahead of you, whispered Samantha, for she had already taken out her notebook and was jotting a reminder note for her nanny, which said just that. Nanny Piggins, Boris and the children and the counsellor stood and watched as Dr. Higginbottom and Sebastian strode about the park. Dr. Dr. Higginbottom stared at things, lay down on the concrete, jumped up and down in the water of the stormwater drain, licked a burnt-out car, and generally behaved like a nitwit, while Sebastian took photographs and measurements. "Do you think he really is a doctor?" asked the counsellor. "He seems to be behaving like a lunatic." "There is no doubt in my mind that he is both," said Nanny Piggins wisely. "He is clearly a lunatic because what he's doing is barking mad, but he is clearly a PhD because anyone with a lesser qualification who carried on like this would have been locked up years ago." After 15 minutes of eccentric behaviour, the doctor and his assistant returned. "My report is ready," said Dr. Higginbottom. "Don't you need time to go away and write it up with photos, graphs and spreadsheets?" asked the counsellor. "I don't work in government. That's your job," said Dr. Higginbottom. "I have reached my verdict. Of all the thousands of public spaces I have been asked to inspect in dozens of different countries around the world, I have never before seen one like this. It is absolutely and utterly perfect. There's no need to change a thing, except perhaps you could add a few more burnt-out cars." "I knew it!" exclaimed Nanny Piggins. "The man is a genius." "But it's dangerous, unsafe and rat-infested," protested the counsellor. "As is life," said Dr. Higginbottom. "This park has a wonderful scope for the imagination. There's opportunity for water play, interaction with small mammals, and role-play games using found objects." "You mean there's a drain, rats and rubbish," summarised the counsellor. "Exactly! This park has everything," gushed Dr. Higginbottom. "For the sake of the children, I forbid you to change a thing. Sebastian, give the man his invoice. We're leaving." Sebastian slapped a sheet of paper in the counsellor's hand and they left. The counsellor slumped down on the bonnet of a burnt-out car. "What am I going to do?" he asked. "I've been given a $2 million budget to improve this park, and I've got nothing to spend it on." Nanny Piggins felt sorry for the counsellor. "Don't worry. Why don't you just hire another advisor, one who'll be more cooperative?" "But where am I going to find another person with a PhD in children's playgrounds?" asked the counsellor. "Yes, I doubt you'll find a second person quite that silly," agreed Nanny Piggins. "So why don't you hire me? I am the world's leading flying pig. Amazing and delighting children comes as naturally to me as breathing in and out." "She's telling the truth," confirmed Michael. "She amazes and delights us every day." "Sometimes she horrifies and shocks us as well," added Samantha. "But she always makes us the most delicious cake afterwards to help us get over it." "Plus, Nanny Piggins only charges 10 cents an hour," added Derek. "And it's only going to take me 1 minute to tell you how to spend your budget," said Nanny Piggins. "It will?" asked the counsellor, beginning to feel a glimmer of optimism. "Obviously, you can't change a thing that's here," said Nanny Piggins, "but you could add to it." "Add to it?" asked the counsellor, liking the idea. "How?" "Really, the only way I can think of improving this already wonderful public play area is by building a state-of-the-art ice cream shop slap bang in the middle," stated Nanny Piggins, stamping her trotter on the very spot she thought suitable. Everyone gasped, the way people instinctively do gasp when they know they have just heard a brilliant idea. "Ice cream and playgrounds go together like," said Nanny Piggins, "well, like cake and more cake." So this is exactly what the counsellor did. And because Nanny Piggins was a generous soul, she even agreed to allow some of the budget to be spent on planting flower beds, because everyone liked looking at flowers and lawn, and because she knew how much it would upset Nanny Ann. The Hazelnut Street Park soon became the most popular park in Dulsford, because even the most scrupulous parent can overlook a few rats and a storm water drain when they had a double scoop of chocolate ice cream with extra sprinkles in their hand. All right, and that is the end of the story. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. That's it for now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next week, what I'm going to have time for. It's another busy couple of weeks. Maybe we'll get back to the last couple of chapters in the story of Odysseus. We'll see. Oh, I should say, some people have been writing to me and asking me to do an episode, to do a whole series of episodes based on The Lord of the Rings. And people have in the past asked me to do things based on books. But the problem is, like, I can do things like Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet, because they're based on 500-year-old plays, and Shakespeare's been dead for 500 years, but the copyright of a book is retained by an author and his heirs for 70 years after the author passes away. So, like, for example, J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, he only passed away in, I think it was 1973. So the copyright of Lord of the Rings does not become public until 2044. It's actually later still in America. So I can't use books that are in copyright. Well, at least I'd prefer not to get into that because I don't want to get in trouble with the publishers. So that's why I can do things like ancient Greek myths and Shakespeare. But yeah, so if you're going to suggest things, I'm always happy to hear suggestions for things I can write stories about. But there's no way I can do them if they're still in copyright. So just check when the author, if the author is still alive for a start, and if they have passed away, they've got to have passed away more than 70 years ago. Like Peter Pan is another example. J.M. Barrie wrote Peter Pan, and J.M. Barrie has passed away more than 70 years ago. But copyright is really, really complicated. Like, it's different in every country, and then there can be exceptions. And Peter Pan, the problem with that is, so the book is out of copyright, but the theatre play isn't, because he bequeathed the rights for the theatre play to a children's hospital. So it gets so complicated, copyright. So you've got to be kind of careful about using books and stories that are still in copyright or could still be in copyright. So anyway, if you write to me and I don't do the story you suggest, that is why. All right, that's it for now. Until next time, goodbye. Hello, it's me again. If you enjoyed listening to Bedtime Stories with R.A. Spratt, it would be really helpful if you could like, subscribe, follow, and or review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to now. Every little one of those digital affirmations helps, and the bigger this podcast gets, the more I can justify procrastinating from my real job to keep bringing these stories to you. Thank you.